Just over 10 years ago, I was in a pretty dark spot. It's also when I talked to God and asked for change in me because I recognized too much of my life, throughout the whole of my life, I had been held back by fears and concerns that were too much for me to bear. I took on responsibility that wasn't mine. I was afraid to speak up, all kinds of things that were hindering me. I knew were part of my experience. I didn't know how to identify each of them at the time, but I knew that I had a fear of speaking up because of previous situations that I'd been in and how that impacted my life. But I knew there was also fears. I just didn't know what all those fears were tied to or how to even move forward. And so I asked God to help me have the courage to go through the process of healing and growth. And that was a very scary proposition. I want to share a little bit of that story today as I talk about graceful growth. Because the idea of self-improvement, well, for me, it was not okay to even think about self-improvement. There were beliefs and hesitations inside of me around the concept of self-improvement because of maybe some teaching that I had listened to, which definitely felt off and it didn't seem like they were honoring God in the process. And at the same time, there was this fear of being me and a fear of being prideful or being seen as selfish. I wanted to give everything because you are called to trust and obey God. I wanted to give it all. And in the process, eventually I realized I lost me, who God made me to be, the whole purpose and design of God within me. I still felt connected to God, but the God that I was connected to felt distant, emotionless, not really a part with me and participating with me in life, present with me in the struggle, but off in the distance, and someone that I had to appease, and I always had to improve and get things right so that I could hopefully not have him upset with me. Even though I would have told you differently. I would have told you all the good things. God loves you. Jesus loves you. I sang those songs since I was a little girl. But somewhere deeper inside of me, that was what I was experiencing. It is the deeper belief that I lived out of. And I have a feeling I'm not the only one. I think there are a lot of weary Christians who don't even know, maybe they don't even have an awareness that something deeper is countering the beliefs that they say they want to have, that they say they value, that they know their identity in Christ. They know all these different things, but there's a block, there's a disconnect in there somewhere. And thinking about self-improvement for me was like, no, you just don't even go down that road because all I'm supposed to do is learn how to be a better Christian. If I'm in that picture, then it's not about God anymore, which isn't true because I'm God's design. And it took a long time for me to even receive the spirit nudges that I was getting from God for something different. That not only did he want to be with me in the ups and the downs and all the things, but that he smiled with me, that he rejoiced and cried and had these different emotions, and that he called me, asked me, not asked, he told me that I needed to walk in what he's already given me. That is what I sensed in this pivotal moment. So going back before, I mentioned a little over 10 years ago. A little over 10 years ago, we came back from the ranch after fostering. And it was so stressful and draining and all the things. All the unhealthy beliefs, the fears the experiences that I had that hadn't processed, that hadn't been healed inside, that were actually taking me more and more inward, were still inside of me. And so with that trauma and that stress, it came to the surface. And it was so prevalent and it could not be ignored anymore. Have you ever experienced something like that? Where you know something is underneath the surface that's been stirring, it just isn't right. You want to fix it, you don't know how to make it better, you try all these different things, and then you have a season in life that is so stressful, so overwhelming, it undoes, it's undone. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? You feel undone inside. Still, that motivation is inside of me to say, nope, I have to get this right. I have to heal. I have to do what I have to do to stop having fear. And when I asked God to help me move through the healing process, that was scary. But part of it was identifying that I actually had some of those feelings and I couldn't just get it right. I couldn't do it anymore. And so over time, I started recognizing it's really, really hard to actually surrender, to let go. And I say that with hesitation. I pause there because there's also these messages that we hear as Christians. You just need to surrender. You need to let go. You need to let God. You need to do these things. And it's like getting told, hey, just you need to suddenly be 5 feet taller, 50 pounds lighter, like different color skin, all these whatever. It's somehow magically everything's just going to change. Maybe not that drastic. Maybe that's not a good analogy, but we're putting things onto people and expecting that that's going to be the thing that fixes them. And then they take that on, or I did, as a burden, that this is how I'm going to fix myself by doing the thing of surrendering. But the actual process where you're just like, I really can't do anymore and I need you, God, is different. That is part of graceful growth. Receiving. I don't even know anymore, God. My brain is tired of trying to figure it out. My heart is tired of trying. And I don't even know what I need. Admitting that I just don't have what it takes to make it better right now. And that really stinks. But the thing is that before these shifts that I experienced after this pivotal time, I didn't feel like I had choices, in the sense that I was so compelled to be duty bound to what God asked me to do. You follow his calling, you surrender, you trust and obey, you just trust that this is God's best, and you do these things, which also leads to trusting anybody who says that they're saying something from God, but they're man, and they may not be right. And that put me in harm's way in different situations. Is that something that you're familiar with? Have you ever wanted so hard, so much, to do the good thing, to do the right thing, to feel that excitement with Jesus, and the less anxiety and the freedom, and the more you did it, the more you tried, the more you either shrink inside or feel on high alert and alarm, and you're fighting against everybody and everything, and you're having all these reactions and you can't understand why. Anger bursts are coming out. People say, don't be angry. Well, now I failed again because I got angry. That is such an overwhelming burden. That there is a shift in this concept of graceful growth and improving ourselves that is without that burden, without all the expectations of I have to, I should, you must do this. And it includes having choices. God loving us and us responding to him because of the love is a choice. If we didn't have that choice, it wouldn't be love. We would be forced to do something. And I feel sad now thinking about my own position, and I believe the position that a lot of Christians experience of, I don't know how to phrase this the best way, but it's God offering love, acceptance, belonging with Him, and our resistance to say, oh no, my brain says, I know that you accept me, but my life is going to live as if that's not really true. I don't actually believe you. I don't actually believe that you could love me as I am, with sadness or anger or confusion or doubt. So I'm going to say that I believe these things, but I'm going to live something else out. And I feel sad now because it must have grieved God's heart, and it grieves me that I missed out on so many good things from that position. This is part of what drives me to do the things that I do today, from trauma healing to growth, and growth as who we are, because now I am fully sold in believing that God is smiling. He has not just this big, grand, unique purpose and plan that we have to figure out, and we can only get it right if we figured out that one plan that God has for us, but that He has a design and a realm, if that's the right word, of the way that He's brought our gifts together, and the way that He brings good out of bad circumstances, and in this offer of His love and acceptance around all of that, that isn't just about getting the thing right. It's about being shaped and receiving and noticing God's presence with us. Like there's this ebb and flow. Sometimes we get it right. Sometimes we miss out. But then when we miss out, or we mess up or something like that, we get to experience something good of God then too. And there's this place like a child exploring. They don't know how to do all the things. They can't figure out how to, when they're first learning to walk, they don't also know how, well, some kids know how to climb everything, but in my mind, I'm thinking about climbing a rock wall or something like that, or they're not really sure how to put the blocks in the certain holes. They try all these different things. We try, we don't get it right. He's there, and then we try again. If a child is in the loving presence of a parent and caregiver who is not after them because they messed up, I'm putting it in the wrong place, or they spilled their toys or something like that, then the child's not going to be afraid of messing up. They just try it, they move on. And so for some of us, we have, maybe from our personalities already, maybe from life experiences, whatever, but this pressure internally to perform, to acquiesce to other people's opinions, and to please others, because we don't even know how to tolerate their disapproval or the discomfort that we feel inside of ourselves, and receiving acceptance now when we mess up is difficult. It is difficult to even take in God's goodness, or God's goodness coming through another person. It doesn't feel comfortable. We've learned patterns over the years where we start to say, oh no, God, sorry, not that. And that takes time. That's one reason I love EMDR and the therapy work that I do, because it helps the brain bring things together from the head to the heart, the physiology in the body to settle down, to have new experiences, so that undoing those beliefs, the beliefs that were causing us to live in a way that we don't actually want to live, change. And not only does that change, but the way that we experience life as the person we are designed to be, it's like taking a deep breath. It's full of opportunity. It is not always easy still, but there is more capacity for recovering when a mistake happens, or honesty in reflecting when we do something that actually could be problematic for someone else. It causes them a pain, whatever. Living from that place where God's love and acceptance has shifted the core of our being. And we've had these different experiences that help us have that shift. increases our ability to tolerate negative things. It increases our ability to a principle that I think of frequently, especially as it pertains to the growth process and self-improvement. Because remember, I talked about how self-improvement in my eyes was always about pride and focus on self, which felt too selfish, but then I was focusing so much on others and not noticing self at all. The opposite of that is that we can focus so much on our good that we don't attend to others. Like it can flip-flop one way or the other. And so this anchoring piece for me in this graceful growth idea, and their self-improvement is part of it, is honoring self and other. Seeing that you and I, we are both equally valued by God. That God values his creation. One is not higher up than the other. One is not lower down than the other. Again, mentally, sure, I would have said that was true ages ago. But it's not what I experienced. I frequently felt one down, and there were other areas of life where I felt one up. I wouldn't want to admit that, but I did. I do. I mean, it ebbs and flows sometimes, right? And today, that helps me kind of maybe more balance, that I am improving things. I am working on things, but not with the striving sense of trying to get it all right. More from a place of I'm receiving, here's like when God's commands and God's love, I see it as God offering us, this is the way things are good. This is the way I design things to work and to work well. And sometimes it has limits that we don't like or structures that we don't like. But when we're in that place of allowing some of those limits and structures in our life, we can work toward like the ways that we shift things in our thought life, in our minds, our activities, etc., over time that help us. It's a little vague. I'm sorry about that. But this shifting that helps us experience the good that God wants for us. It's. I know that probably sounds a little bit nebulous because there's the difficulty in the mindset that I came from of willpower and muscling it up and doing everything that you can, trying to get it right, versus receiving, responding, that actually still incorporates effort. It does take mental effort. It takes humbling moments where you're not doing the thing that you want to do most in the moment. You maybe you want to react, but you're training your brain to do new things, to calm down, to be able to respond to someone differently than you had before. I mean, that is work, but it's not the same kind of work as this nervous energy inside that says, I got to figure it out. I got to get it right. And this shift for me included from before the ranch to after the ranch, and this journey of asking God to help me walk through healing of the fears. Included this moment, which you may have heard me talk about in another video, of hearing God say, when I was pouring out my heart and asking God to intervene, to do certain things, to make certain people do certain things, to change things up. Because in my mind, I knew what the right thing was, and it very well could have been, I still think it probably was the right thing that would be part of God's design. But God's response that I heard, that I sensed, was, I've given you what you need, now walk in it. That those words could mean different things to different people. For me in that moment, it was pretty clear that what he was referring to were parts of how he designed me, and gifts, things that he already saw in me that I wasn't using. Part of that was the choices. When I didn't feel like I had a choice before, I learned that sometimes God was saying, here are several choices. pick one. I'm not going to tell you, do this one and everything's going to be fine. If you get that one right, that's the way that you avoid pain or distress in any other situation. I'm giving you options to choose, and I've given you the ability to persevere. We have courage from God. We have, what's the word? Like, it's not just courage from God, but courage the way that God designed our brains to heal and to feel more like we can do something. So when we meet up with a distressing obstacle in life of some kind, somebody's response isn't the way we want it to be, or we made a choice and then there's different obstacles along the way. We have wisdom, we have discernment, we have different abilities that we can draw upon. We also have access of this courage from God and the way that he puts courage into us through other people. That's what I was looking for before. And so that is all part of this picture that I took in when I sensed God saying, I've given you what you need. You can, and I believe God was drawing me up to speak opinions strongly that were different than other people's in certain situations, to protect myself, where I allowed anybody who had the authority to kind of make these decisions that put me in unhealthy, unsafe situations. And I believe that God had given me the wisdom and given me a brain to make those choices, and then the courage to say them, to implement them, to learn boundaries, to identify what was important to me, and to be okay with making a mistake, maybe not getting it right, trying out boundaries, for example, trying to assert my opinion in certain situations, and being okay with the possible outcome that I may be wrong. That's another thing that God gives us, is the ability to make it through. Is any of this making any sense to anybody? I would love to hear if any of this resonates with you. If you have ever felt like God is there for others, but not you. If you have ever felt like you just needed to sit back and let God do whatever God's going to do. And so you actually became passive in your own life. And maybe it's connected to feeling like your life isn't of value enough to develop, to explore. It hasn't felt safe to develop or to explore. And I believe that that is not stewarding what God has given us. After I sense God say this, I've given you what you need, now walk in it, I still had to wrestle with defending protecting myself from harm, for example. Because I also was conscientious of, if I just self-protected, I didn't want to build walls, but that was just one way of not actually owning and managing my own life, not stewarding what was mine to steward. And today, big passion in my heart is helping other Christians develop who they are and how they show up in this life. Because their life is so valuable. And the unique combination of God's design in you can only be displayed by you. If the enemy gets us to stay in a place where we think that we can't do anything for our self-care, self-improvement, if any of that is always selfish and prideful, then we are disconnected from the God who loves us as the person, and he sees that fullness of his design in us. We essentially tell God, no thanks. I want to figure it out on my own because I don't actually believe you. And that's an isolating, lonely place to be. Some of us have been living there a long, long time. And I believe God is gentle and kind, and He's offering space to grow, to explore, to sometimes get it wrong, and for Him to pick you back up and say, my child, I'm still here. Yeah, okay, we got this wrong. Let's try again. Let's try something else. Sometimes we get it wrong and there are consequences, and we can survive those consequences. For example, we get it wrong, and let's say I say something that I don't have a full picture of, I don't understand, whatever, my words come out wrong. There's a fear of me that I don't get the right words out, and if I say the wrong thing, then people will be upset, or I'll be misunderstood, etc. I get it wrong. Sometimes I do these videos and I stumble all over the place, and then I look back and I say, wow, I wouldn't even want to listen to myself right now. I'm going to redo that video. It's not a life-threatening mistake, but it feels like it sometimes. And then when I have those opportunities to test and try things, and I can even survive and reflect back on how I've made it through that really uncomfortable place of what somebody else felt and experienced because of me, or how someone else saw me, like the different challenges that would come along with that as a consequence in my mind, I can get through that. And in the process, actually feel more free, because it has been freeing to say, man, I really messed up. I am so sorry that affected you. Would you forgive me? Without the shame tear down that says, oh my gosh, I messed up. I can't even be present with anybody. It feels intolerable for anyone to be around me. Okay, so yes, thank you for Anna said, yes, it resonates. I understand what you're saying in my head. My body doesn't always agree. That is so true. The mind wants to do one thing and the body doesn't always, what's the word? Cooperate. I want to say correlate. That wasn't the right word. The body doesn't always cooperate. Come on, body, just move, do the thing. Say the words, get the things out there. And it's interesting. I was just listening to training for Call to Peace. I'm in that advocacy training where they're training advocates for people who are in domestic violence relationships, emotionally destructive relationships. I specialize in helping individuals heal from trauma related to emotional trauma and spiritual trauma, etc. And today the focus on the training was a child's brain and development, and the way that different, the wirings sometimes that aren't built where they need to be. So for example, when there's a healthy nurturing back and forth with the caregiver and the child, it builds a lot of different neural networks, etc. And there's different shapings in the brain. And it's important to see that. I think it's helpful to see that. And at the same time, it can feel really sad. But what we've learned in neuroscience is that they can shift. It takes time and it takes new experiences. And so this place of exploration that I was talking about is a place of allowing some of these new experiences, which help the brain build the new pathways. And those you have to have many of them over time for the pathways to continue to develop and to flourish in our minds, which affect our physiology and our internal capacity to respond versus react. Our internal capacity to live from a place that we say we want to believe and actually feel it deeper inside. And the response is easier. It's not that constant hold back. So if anybody else resonates with that or can share, their experience with, maybe this idea of focusing on self wasn't okay. Maybe your needs were denied for a long period of time. That is going to teach someone that it's not okay to have needs, it is going to disconnect us from even knowing what we could possibly need relationally, emotionally, anything beyond the physical needs. Even the physical needs sometimes. We can deny all of that when it has been denied to us, it was dismissed, when we didn't have it available. All kinds of things in our lives can affect that. And that is essentially a part of losing who we are, losing the ability to even connect to the self that God designed. And one of the questions that I ask sometimes is, what do you need? That question actually can bring up a lot of distress. And there's a video that I'm redoing some things for Unleashed Sheets. I've had some changes with the platform and the technology, so I'll announce as soon as it's all ready. But I had created additional sheet that talks about needs for those times when you're checking in with yourself to say, what do I need? So that you could start to connect to the different types of needs that are out there and what it might look like. Well, first, what is the need that you might have? Because that's a first step. When you've had your needs denied, starting to identify that it's possible you might have needs, what they could be. It's the first step before you know how to get the needs met and then how to get them met in healthy ways. So the video that goes with it will help people identify some of these different categories. And I provided a jump start with relational, spiritual, physical, other types of needs that can help us start to connect to what's going on inside of me where I might actually have a need. That isn't easy to do. That takes a lot of practice as well when your needs have been denied and you learn to deny your own needs. You could give to other people, but taking care of some core things that actually help sustain you, energize you, fuel you, and help you live from a centered core instead of that anxious energy. It takes time to connect to that. And that's one of the reasons this phrase, honor self and honor others, is so prevalent in my mind, because I don't want to move so far into that I'm also completely focused on myself and not able to see other people. But I don't want to not do it. It feels tricky in that space. By not improving, doing self-improvement at all, not only did I feel like I was dishonoring God's design in me, dishonoring God, seeing his design in me. And I say that not with a lot of shame, but more just sadness, because it is what happened. That's part of what has shifted is this being able to tolerate the reality of something that doesn't feel good, that I believe that I may have, really felt like I messed up in, but just to be able to acknowledge, yeah, that's not, I wish that wasn't the case. And I'm sad that it was. It was. I can survive this. Things are shifting now and I'm in process, but I'm not going to be taken down by it either. Other effects of not improving self included increased fear, increased anxiety, ongoing hurt that wasn't getting resolved, and even some level of increased neediness for others to smile, to say something, to whatever, something from others to help me feel okay with being me. But the self-improvement that has shifted some of that comes in the form of developing who I am and how I show up in the world, leaning into identifying, wait a minute, I see things differently, and maybe I can just try speaking them and saying them out loud. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. Maybe I just need to work on communication skills. Maybe I need to identify what's in my head that doesn't come out clearly to someone else. These are all part of that exploration process in developing me and how I show up, how I communicate something. It also happens in relationships and how I relate to my kids and my spouse and my friends. There was a point in time where I was really in need of others so much because there was such an intense disruption inside of me from the trauma and my whole nervous system being jacked up. As I started to experience more healing, I recognized how much certain friends were ready to listen and that felt so good, and it was healing for me. But as I was healing, it was important to me to value the friendship and that growth process to where it was more mutual. I really appreciated that they would listen, but I also recognize that sometimes there are some people who will listen really well, but it's hard for them to talk. And if they could feel really connected in a closer relationship, it gives them an opportunity to say what's difficult for them to say. And I wanted to give that space. They meant a lot to me. Still do. So, what are some of the ways that maybe you either denied yourself or allowing yourself to improve, or tried to improve yourself in this, but with this anxious energy behind it, that it is still about the getting it right. And so I got to fix what's wrong with me. And now you have the burden of the shoulds and the I just have to do it this way. If I just, I know I just need to do that and I just have to do that. That language is a sign of that burden and expectation kind of clouding things and weighing you down. When I hear that in one-to-one coaching or something like that with another person, I tend to say, do you want to? Do you want to do that? They say, I just need to, whatever. I'll ask, do you want to? In some cases, they don't want to. That's just important information. Do you want to or do you not want to? With that, then guess what comes into play? Choice. You get to choose. Even if you don't want to do something, you can choose to do it anyway for a specific reason, because that is something that's going to help you in a relationship with someone. It's something that's going to help you. You feel like it's the right thing to do in that moment. You believe that's what God's asking you to do. You can make that choice. So it's not about doing something whether or not we want to do it, but that there's more freedom in there for the exploration process versus when it's all, I just have to. If I just get this right, then this will be better. Let's see, I had some other points just kind of talking about denying needs. Oh, some other things that some of us learn to deny is the good in ourselves and the good that is different about us from other people. It can feel really scary to explore a part of yourself that someone else doesn't understand or that you don't see someone else doing before you. Like when you have a leader of some kind, they're the first person that is testing the waters in, let's say it's a new program, software that's out there. Someone has to be the first one to put it out. Once it's out there, then other people come up with variations. Social media, for example. Who was the first? I don't know. Was it what was it called? I don't remember. Anyway, somebody comes out with something first, and then other variations come along afterwards. If you're the first one to go out there, it is really vulnerable and scary. Likewise, something that's uniquely different about you, maybe the way you see things, maybe the words that you would use versus the words that someone else would use in a situation, or the process that you would go through that's a little bit different than someone else's process. It feels scary and vulnerable to be the first one to put it out there because you don't know how it's going to land, how other people are going to respond to it. And when the responses in the past have told us it's not safe because we were laughed at, we were frowned upon, we were abandoned, something happened, it becomes extra hard and difficult, extra vulnerable and scary to put it out there. And sometimes I just wonder if God is gently calling us to move in that direction, just to move towards a place of being vulnerable and testing the part of ourselves that feels different than other people, and drawing us one step further and further towards fully living out the unique design in each of us. So some of us learn to deny the good for ourselves and to deny our good differences. We can also learn to deny so when I was talking before about sometimes when we do things that maybe hurt someone else, or if we make a decision and the outcome is not something we wanted to deal with. It doesn't feel good. We lost money. We lost a friend. Something happened. There was a consequence there that doesn't feel good. The result that it really does connect to something that we chose to do or our reaction or whatever. And so that feels bad. But that bad can feel like this all-encompassing shame that we wear. And what we deny in that is what God offers, His love. When we mess up, His love is available. It is available right there. And I don't want us to deny love and acceptance that sits with us when we do mess up. That becomes a powerful source of courage so that we can own our mistakes, so that we can try again and explore the next time a different way. And in that love and acceptance, the nervous system starts to settle down. And we feel re-energized to try again, to explore something new another time. If that makes sense for anybody else, I would love to know as well. I am hitting on a lot of topics today. They've all been part of my mind and heavy in my heart and mind for the last decade as I've pursued my own healing journey, and then how the brain works, how God works, how scripture and science connect to one another when God talks about renewing the mind. And it's not just about telling ourselves these one verse or this one thing that we're supposed to know, but there's a process that shifts things so that our brain is building new pathways, our heart is experiencing a core belief shift that helps us connect to what's happening in our minds and live from a different place. It is a renewal process. And God designed our brains in really, really amazing ways. He designed connection and relationships. He designed different strengths in different people to be part of what we need and what we, we energize one another from, when somebody else can provide space for my big emotions, they contain that space. That provides energy for me because those emotions aren't stuck inside of me. Maybe for the next person, I'm able to validate that, yeah, that experience was really difficult and I can understand why you'd be so friggin' angry right now. That validation gives energy to someone else. It goes around and around and around. That's part of God's design. Comfort one another. Comfort as you've been comforted. Mourn with one another. Rejoice with one another. Those one another verses. These are part of this offering, this invitation to experience good with God. Not I have to just get it right. And this crippling, it's like this shriveling inside of who we are, or this trying to put on this persona that we are somebody that we're not, all while on the inside, the core of who we are is unsettled, striving and trying to fix things. And there's a dissonance there between what we want and what we experience, what we say and what we experience. That dissonance, some of us learn to not notice it anymore, but I sense that dissonance inside of me as just something that doesn't feel good and I want it to resolve right away. And it's taking layer after layer for things to start to shift. And so I hope that in the process of growth, that you get to experience grace as a space for exploration, a space for accepting love and presence whether it's directly from God's Spirit to yours or through other people who are offering it to you, albeit imperfectly at times, but that you're able to take that in more and more and more and breathe deeper in your soul and say, even when I get it wrong, I can explore and try again. I can get back up and try again. Maybe today, what I need is rest and grace for myself that just says, I've been trying really hard. I need a break right now. And that's okay too. So this self-improvement concept, the graceful way of improving ourselves is going to include moments of just rest and moments of tolerating small steps, one after another, building up over time. It's including accepting that sometimes we go one direction and things shift. Sometimes we need to make amends if we've harmed someone, and that we're still going to make it through because God's love is still there present with us. It's not a heavy pressure to fix it, to figure it out, and to be good. And at the same time, there is so much beauty in the opportunity to develop who you are, fully leaning into the design of who you are and leaning into the process that helps you experience that, the exploration and the connecting with God in the process. That developing who you are and how you show up in this world is a beautiful picture of stewarding life that God gave you, that He redeemed for you, and that He is like, I think of like the potter, and he's shaping and shaping the clay, but when we're in this moldable place of developing who we are and how we show up, we're allowing God to kind of even do some of that exploration, like molding things around and bringing about the most beauty that He wants to bring, not just for us, for His creation, for this world. So there's development of self that is important to identify because it is specifically about one person, that is also about the big picture of all people. Does that make sense? It sounds a little woo-woo in my head, or like as I'm saying it, the way it's coming out. It goes back to this concept I was talking about before, honoring self and honoring others, that keeps me in a place of I am valued the same as another person. And why do I not remember if it's Romans 12:2 or 12:3, but it's the verse that talks about to be sober-minded as we see ourselves. I got to do a better job at actually saying the specific verse. But to think of yourself with sober mind is to think of ourselves clearly. This is the first time I heard that, when someone said, well, when you're sober, you're thinking clearly. You're seeing clearly. And if we see ourselves clearly as God sees us, that is pretty life-giving. And clearly means that He sees us and He sees other people as all part of God's design. We are worth developing. You are worth developing. You are worth the process. And I pray that you experience many opportunities of grace and deep breaths to receive. Even allow those shoulders to go down. Take in a moment, a momentary glimpse even. If that's all you see right now, that's all you see. Notice what you do see. Notice what you can see as good, as something to receive, as relief and release inside of you of not having to figure out the perfect answer to get the perfect outcome. It doesn't even work that way. It's so exhausting to live that way. Allow space and notice when you are still accepted and or when you make it through, if you mess up in your mind, it may not even really be a mess up, but if you do something that you think you wish you hadn't done, notice you made it through and God is still with you. That's pretty powerful too. So enough for today. I had different points I was going to make, but it is what it is. I have a general outline when I do these videos, and I'm hopeful that my story is helpful because I'm sharing it more so that you can relate to the process and hopefully experience hope and encouragement and hopefully even some inspiration of what it looks like for you. Whatever the different topics are that I talked about, if it's receiving something good from God, if it's allowing yourself to rest from all the shoulds, to notice a shift inside yourself when you just can't figure it out anymore, but you really want to get it right and it's just not working and you don't know what else to do. And I pray that something resonates for you and that it's helpful. And if you'd like to continue, there's a wait list right now for the Cultivate Together group, but I'm hoping to have a little short-term sale in December. Short-term, not sale, but opening window. I have some things that I'm working on in the background. My prayer ultimately is that whatever God has for you, that you would see some of that good today and take it in. Even if it's through unexpected people, unexpected circumstances, unexpected processes, I pray that you would receive God's love and care with you today. Take care, everyone. See you next time.